That's sometimes us, though, isn't it? How many times do we complain about things? I complain a lot. I'm sad to say that I complain more than I should. And I got to remember, you know, sometimes the times that you think things are going the worst turn out to be for the best.
Yes.
You ever noticed that in your life?
Yes.
When I first got in the Messianic movement, I became a millionaire. I won the lottery, and probably like a lot of you, things didn't go exactly the way I thought they would in my life. I didn't immediately start to experience the blessings. I actually went from having a very well-paying job in the Navy to working for $20 an hour as a nurse, and that was tough on me with 3 kids at the time. I got 4 now. The thing was that I didn't realize that God was preparing me for something.
Amen.
And when I finally gave up on trying to do things, accomplish things my way, and I just kind of poured out to Him, things changed. I got a job in Minnesota instead of Iowa, where they pay literally over 50% better, starting out just 2 hours away. And little did I know is that job enabled me to actually be able to come down here.
Amen.
Because at that job, I can get full benefits and only work part-time. And when I'm not getting extra shift, or when I'm not teaching, I can pick up extra shifts. There. Thanks. And so, it's tough to not complain, but sometimes I realize that the bad things end up being God's will to put you in the right places. Right? We look at Yeshua on the cross. How much did He complain about it?
Just once, yes.
Just once. But He said, if it's your will, take this cup from me, but if not, your will be done. He was willing to serve humanity. He was willing to undergo this fight with chaos. You notice what he goes around doing. He goes around essentially challenging all the powers, if you will. He goes to the temple, and he challenges the temple authority. Now, how did he do that? He goes up to the Temple Mount, right? And first he curses a fig tree for failing to bear fruit, which is what Israel is supposed to be doing. And then he goes into the temple. And we always think, the temple is just the little building. No, it's the temple complex is what he's talking about there. And at that place, he sees them doing what? Buying and selling. Now, is there anything wrong with buying and selling in and of itself? No. People need animals for sacrifices. But the problem is, surrounding the temple is what's called the soreg. I'm sure you guys have been taught a lot on that. The soreg was separating out and said, you're not from one of us, you're not Jewish, you gotta stay up here and worship God. Now, people have different opinions on that. I personally don't believe that was God's design for the temple to separate them out, because you look at Numbers 15, and it talks about the foreigner not only being able to sacrifice, but being required to bring a sacrifice when he sins, the ger. But, aside from that, this is the only place where people from the nations can worship God. And what do they have going on there? Big old marketplace. And so, Yeshua goes and he challenges the temple authorities in the concept that it's not about you worshiping God, it's about bringing the nations in to worship God. They were very, very against that. Both the Sadducees and a lot of the Pharisees as well. There were certain groups that were like that. But we see this in the book of Acts, chapter 10. They wouldn't even sit with them at the same table. How much of an insult that is? Back then, you go to someone, you go and say, we're all one in Messiah, but we're not going to eat with you. That was a huge insult to them. They were essentially saying, you're not really human. They were creating the same class system that was going on in the rest of the world. The Romans had a class system, or the caste system. They had said, we've got our senators, all these different levels. You read the Mishnah. The Mishnah talks about there's 10 castes that came out of Babylon. They were, again, separating people out into different levels. And that's the whole idea that Paul talks about There's neither Jew nor Gentile, Greek, male, female. He's not saying, hey guys, we're all transsexual now. He's saying it doesn't matter if you're a male or female. It doesn't matter who you are. It matters what? Your faith in God. Yeshua comes to restore and rebuild Israel out of the faithful remnant. Anyone ever wonder why he chose 12 disciples? I mean, so you can only find 12 people? 12 tribes. Now let me ask you a question. Did he go around to the DNA tester and check each one of them to make sure that they were each one from each tribe? No. In fact, we just saw the sons of Zebedee from the same mom, probably, I can't tell you 100% accurate, but probably were from the same tribe. I'm just going to guess. I'm going to throw that out there. I can't prove it. You can't disprove it. We'll move on from there. He's rebuilding Israel, but this time it's not about, and I'm going to propose to you, it never was about the DNA. It was always about the faithfulness to God. That's what God has always wanted, is a people who will be faithful to Him, who can teach the rest of the world how to be faithful to Him, who can multiply images, who could bear fruit and multiply. That same thing we see in Genesis 1:28. Be fruitful, multiply, fill the earth and subdue it. See that same language frequently found in Yeshua's messages. Why does he choose all of these agricultural metaphors? Could be that he was a farmer. I know that theory's been thrown out there. But it could be that he's going back to the garden language. He's talking about be fruitful, multiply. Fill the earth with what though? His seed, which are the images of God. And so you can be fruitful and multiply through the normal methods of human procreation, but you can also do that by replicating images of God. That's how we can be fruitful. That's how we can multiply. And that's what Yeshua comes and teaches us. That's why He is in the image of God. That's why it's so important for us to not just focus on the death, but also look at His life. The gospel authors weren't just, well, we wrote about His death, but we only filled out like 5 pages. We need something more to kind of fluff up the beginning of it. All of that stuff that He did matters. It's not showing us that He did it for us. It's showing us this is the way that we want to be human. This is showing us what God created us to be. That's why Paul in Ephesians says, you were created for good works. How do you know what good works are? I'm going to propose to you it's not just the Torah. Because the people who crucified Yeshua had the Torah. In fact, they were supposed to be the living examples of the Torah. We need more than just the Torah. We need the witness of Yeshua. And it's only through the two of those combined that we get the true message of Scripture. Let's go to Matthew 19 really fast. We can see an example of what happens when you just have the Torah. Don't think I'm talking bad about the Torah. It's very important for us because most of us came out of a system of Christianity which almost ignored the Torah completely. We've kind of swung the pendulum the other way. But we've got to be careful because sometimes some people say, well, this is the only part we need. In fact, sometimes they say, well, I'm not going to teach my children the New Testament. I'm just going to teach them the Torah. That's very dangerous. Let's look at what Yeshua does here. Matthew 19. Yeshua's finished these words. He departed Galilee and so on. Verse 3. The Pharisees came to Yeshua, testing Him, and asked, is it lawful for a man to divorce his wife for any matter at all? Now, for those of us who didn't grow up as either a Pharisee or a Sadducee or something like that, any of you lived in the first century? I don't, according to my son. I was telling him the other day, I was like, you know, when I was growing up, we didn't even have cell phones. He's like, did you know Yeshua? I'm not that old. I mean, come on. So we went back to that time period when they said this, can a man divorce his wife for any reason or any matter? they would instantly know that there was a huge debate going on between the two houses of Pharisees. You had the house of Hillel and the house of Shammai. The house of Shammai says, well, Deuteronomy 24 says that if a man finds any matter of indecency in his wife, let him write her a certificate of divorce. And so they said, aha, if she commits adultery or some sort of lewd act close to adultery, he can divorce her. The house of Hillel, who were the modern-day Democratic Party, they were like, we're more liberal. No. It says a matter or an indecency. And so we're going to be very liberal about this, and we're going to allow, well, if she burned the bread. Later on, it was even if he saw a prettier woman walking down the road. That was grounds for divorce. And so what's really going on here in Matthew chapter 19 is not a discussion about divorce in general. They are asking him to discuss Deuteronomy 24 verse 1. They're asking him to debate the meaning of this phrase that by then had kind of become ambiguous. They weren't really sure what it meant. And so what does Yeshua do? He pulls out his Strong's Concordance and starts going, well, this is word H4237, and according to Strong's, did he go back to the Paleo-Hebrew on it? Well, the word picture here, no, it's interesting. He goes back to Genesis.
Yes.
He's teaching us something very important there. Genesis is the lens for the rest of Scripture. We want to understand how to keep the commandments. It starts in Genesis. That's our lens. Now, of course, as I said, we also need Yeshua to help us with this. So he tells them this, have you not read that he who created them from the beginning made them male and female? For this reason a man shall leave his father and mother and be joined to his wife, and the two shall become one flesh. And he goes on to continues there, and then they respond to him, so then why did Moses command to give her a certificate of divorce and send her away? This is very important for us to understand the Torah. First off, they twisted it. Moses didn't command. It says, Yeshua points this out. He says Moses permitted. He allowed it to happen. Because of the hardness of your hearts. Now, what else has a hard heart? An idol. Because they were under the influence of the idols. Still, the hardness of their heart. Moses permitted it. But from the beginning, it was not this way. And so I say to you, and so on and so forth. So the idea is this. Just because you're keeping the Torah doesn't mean you're in the image of God. Because some of those commandments were not designed to make you in the image of God. Some of them are. And so rather than dividing up the Torah between civil, religious, and ceremonial laws, I'm going to propose to you the way we should divide up the Torah is commandments that make you in the image of God, and commandments that prohibit you from straying too far from the image of God. Does that make sense to everyone?
Yes.
Because to love your neighbor is to be in the image of God. But to not commit murder, just because you didn't commit murder today, doesn't make you in the image of God. Just because you don't steal doesn't mean you're a good person. So we've got image of God, and then why can't we murder? Why can't we steal? Because you're no longer in the image of God. And those commandments, when people drift too far from that, then they have to be cut off from the covenant community, either through death or through exile. But it's about the community. That's why it's hard for us, because we don't really experience community the way that they did. If you allowed someone to continue in that lifestyle, what's going to happen? It's going to start changing people. And so we reverse that situation, and we look at Ruth or Rahab, who were supposed to not be allowed in the community. But what? When you change who you are, when you change your worldview, when you become in the image of God, you're no longer a Moabite. That's why if you look throughout the book of Ruth, she's always called a Moabite. always says Ruth the Moabite, Ruth the Moabite, Ruth the Moabite, until the very last time it just calls her Ruth, because she's no longer a Moabite. We can become children of God. We can become images of God. We can spread images of God. We can be fruitful and multiply by making disciples, not of ourselves, but of Him. And that was, again, another problem in the first century. Remember when Yeshua says this, he said to one of the Pharisees, he said, you go to the ends of the earth to make one disciple, but when you make him a disciple, you make him twice the son of hell that you are. What's the problem there? They weren't supposed to be making disciples of themselves. They were supposed to be making disciples of God. That's what we're called to do today. Not to make disciples of Ryan or Rob or Paul or anyone else. We're called to make disciples of Him. Because He is the image of the invisible God. And so therefore, if you are a disciple of Yeshua, you're ultimately a disciple of the living God. Amen? Does that make sense? All right. You guys want to conclude here, or are we talking about minutes? I don't know how long I've been going. 12 o'clock? Okay. So I really enjoyed this study about the crucifixion. Really kind of put things into perspective for me, because I understood finally that Yeshua becomes... See, we always talk about, what's it called? Substitutional atonement, right? And that kind of theory always bothered me. But when I studied this out, it kind of made sense, but in a different sort of way. Because now what I start to call it is representational